Welcome to 2016 Presidential Candidate Interviews. Today I'm interviewing Daniel Zutler. Mr. Zutler is running as an independent. Hello, Mr. Zutler, and welcome to the interview.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, and I'm honored to be a part of this.
Well, thank you for participating. To give the listeners a chance to get to know you, we're going to ask some icebreaker, get-to-know-you questions. The first one, describe your family, your home life.
Okay, I've been married to my wife for 30 years. We have 3 grown adult children, a boy who's 30, a man who's 27, and my daughter who's 26. And we are raising our 9-year-old grandson. I live in Tampa Bay, Florida. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We are homeowners here. And we are self-employed small business owners.
Okay, expand on that. Describe your employment and your work experience.
My wife is a self-employed nail technician at a beauty salon, and she's been in the industry 26 years this year. I've been the owner of several businesses, from bail bonds to private investigation, security, window tinting, home improvement. Presently, we have a private investigation firm and a multi-conglomerate company which does a number of different things, from education, nonprofit, investments, and management oversight of the businesses.
Okay, what are your hobbies and your interests?
Well, I'd like to say my biggest hobby is my 9-year-old grandson. We enjoy football, we go fishing. I try to give him as much quality family time as I can. We enjoy each other's company. We do the flea markets. We go on trips throughout Florida. Let's see. Yeah, fishing. We do some camping. Love the beach. We have a swimming pool in the backyard, so he kind of lives in that. Go out to dinner. Things along that line.
Okay. What are your favorite...
Just the things, you know what? Best answer, the things that we all normally do.
Okay. What are your favorite places to eat out?
Chili's, like Chili's. Applebee's is good. I'm a personal fan of Chili's. We do the Outback from time to time, but that's primarily it. I think we like Chili's the most.
Do you have a favorite fast food joint?
Wendy's.
Okay. How about a favorite junk food you won't let your wife or anybody let you see eating?
Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts. Favorite TV shows and movies?
Favorite movies, action movies, drama's good. Favorite TV shows. I don't get much of a chance to watch TV as I'd like to. I'm very consumed in the things that I'm presently involved in, which is the presidential campaign, running the 2 businesses. But when I do have that brief moment in time, I like to try to catch up on current events, what's going on around me in the world. Leisure TV, Law and Order. I'm not much of a reality show fan. I have enough reality in the world. Some comedy. There's some comedy stuff.
Do you have any pets?
We do, or we did. My daughter took the dog with her when she moved to her boyfriend, so she can have the dog.
Okay, and the final one. Name a song that you consider your life anthem, kind of a motto, something that represents you.
Possibly The Eye of the Tiger.
And now for the issues-based questions. We made some questions specifically for this interview that you preferred. So here we go. Do you generally support pro-life or pro-choice legislation?
I lean pro-choice, but there's a greater point to that.
Sure,
it's
can you
this.
expand on that?
Absolutely. The moment that you begin to, and these are my personal views, not a presidential view, but the moment you begin to take one right away from any one person or any one group, you fall into very, very dangerous waters, because what's the next right that can be taken away? I don't believe that abortion should be used as a form of birth control. I'm also completely against what they like to refer to as late-term abortion. Now, after speaking with the medical professionals, all tests that need to be performed that are, viable, that are critical, can be done in the first week of the second trimester. If a woman chooses to go with that decision, it's my firm belief that that is between her and God, and not my position to say. But I lean personally towards pro-life, with the exceptions of rape, incest, and the life of the mother.
Okay. In order to balance the budget, do you support reducing defense spending, yes or no?
Actually, no, because what we need to do, and I've often said this, is increase defense spending, but where the increase should be going is in the pockets of the enlisted and lower-ranking officers, meaning everyone from an E1 to an E7 and everyone from an O1 to an O3, O4. And we need to be making sure that their families are taken care of, that they're not going to wonder where the money, where the benefits are, where the supplement is coming from. We need to strengthen our forces. There's no question about that, and we need advanced technology, whether it's boots on the ground, whether it's in the air, because without it, we can't win.
In order to balance the budget, do you support an income tax increase on any tax brackets?
No.
Do you care to expand on that answer?
Yeah, because the thing is this. If you start raising taxes on any one given bracket, there are plenty of other areas that we've looked at that we can take money from, and several of which are the ineffective global aid programs that we presently have. The problem with it is this. The tax code as it's written is a disaster, and it actually needs to be completely dismantled. And what our guys are looking at is surgically taking apart both portions of the fair and flat tax systems, and then surgically connecting them back together again to come down with a system that is concrete and will work. And what I find funny is, I want to add this in, I watch these last debates, and I find interesting how I post this stuff on Facebook, and miraculously they're saying it in the debate. I heard Jendell say it himself. Well, I got this tax credit. No, I looked at both the fair and flat tax options, and there are good points and bad points in both. And if you take the good points from one and the good points from the other and actually connect the two, they're doable, they're viable, they can work. And combine that with the reduction and depletion of ineffective global aid, we can cure a lot of problems. This whole thing has to start with cutting those corporate taxes. You want the jobs here, you have to give these businesses a reason why. You have to give them a reason to be here. They didn't go away just to go away.
What is your economic outlook for the nation?
My economic outlook for the nation is this. If we do not get the deficit under control and we do not have an increase in gross national product and a number of other areas don't increase, we're going to be heading into more than just murky waters financially. We've just got to get spending under control. We've got to become more dependent upon ourselves for a number of things that we could be and should be dependent on, energy being one. And there's so much we can be dependent on ourselves for. I understand everyone says, oh, well, technology, we're not equipped to do this, we're not equipped to do that. If we can build skyscrapers in 6 months or a year, we can put factories together overnight and start making products.
Do you have a tax plan, or will you make changes to the existing tax codes as they are presently written?
Okay, the tax codes as they are presently written don't work, and they haven't worked for a long time. And yes, I actually do have a tax plan. Again, what we intend to do is take both portions, one from the taxpayer tax options, some from the fair flat tax options. Excuse me. And when combined, come down with a new tax system that's never been used, never been tried, but from the stress tests that we put to it and the predictions we put on it as we create it seem to have a positive outcome.
Do you support...
Now, anything new...
Go ahead.
I apologize. Anything new, no one can be sure of. But we are sure of one thing. What we've presently got isn't working.
Do you support the regulation of indirect campaign contributions from corporations and unions?
I do. I think that campaign contributions should be coming from the people, because what it sets is a precedence that says that we're basically... Okay, this practice alone has given many unfair advantages in raising funding, campaign funding. One or more of the goals is the elimination of, that we want to do is the elimination of lobbying and political action groups and committees that contribute to funding candidates. Indirect funding has to stop. If we want to get big business out of government, and the object here is get government out of business, get business out of government. It's time for business to worry about running their respective companies instead of running government. If they want to be in government, sell your company, run for office. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Just like government needs to be out of business. It's got to come to a point where senators can't sit down with chairmen of the boards and CEOs and they'll sit down and say, well, this is what we want to try to get done, so you got to make this happen. No. That practice is going to end in the Zutler administration. Not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. And with regard to unions, they need to concentrate their efforts on the care and well-being of their respective union members and not the ability to influence government through dollars. There's no ifs, ands, or buts to that.
Do you support capital punishment for certain crimes?
Yes, I do.
Do you want to expand on that?
Now, absolutely. Because forensic science in crime is so finite now, this isn't 60 years ago where there could be a mistake. And I'm not saying mistakes can't happen now, but the chances have lessened so greatly that when they say, hey, we've got this guy cold, they mean they've got him cold. And I would be ventured to say capital rape, premeditated first-degree murder, acts of terrorism, things that, along those lines, punishment. The punishment fits the crime, by all means. You take a life, and you did it with malice and you did it maliciously, I have no problem with that.
Do you support alternatives to incarceration for certain nonviolent offenders, such as mandatory counseling or substance abuse treatment?
I do. I don't think that somebody who has a cocaine problem needs to be locked away the rest of their lives, especially if it was nonviolent. If they're just a user, then let's get them some help. And I'll tell you this, I actually have an action plan to cure, or if not cure, at least put such a drastic reduction into alcoholism and drug addiction. We can actually pull it off. And it's very, very, very simple. One key thing is going to make it happen. With this new tax code, you increase jobs. People are going to go back to work. They're going to be more interested in working, doing things with their families, buying things and spending money, than they are going to want to be putting stuff up their nose or shooting it into their veins. People drink and do drugs because 90% of them are depressed. They're not doing it just because, I'm not saying that there aren't those that are hardcore addicts, but there are a number of them that do it just because they're down in the dumps. Get them out of the dumps, and you're going to find that that's actually going to decrease quite a bit. And that comes from me talking to psychologists as well as psychiatrists.
Do you support minimum mandatory sentencing for nonviolent drug offenders?
No. No, because it doesn't do them any good. Okay, take for instance, you got a kid who was picked up. He's got a gram of coke in his pocket. Putting him in prison for 5 years is not helping him. It's not. It does no good. It costs us more money to lock him up for 5 years than it does to try to get him the treatment. And no, not everybody's going to pull through treatment the first time. They may not even pull through it the second time. But I would think by the third time out the gate, if we haven't made some progress or improvement in it, then we can look at alternatives, not necessarily sentencing, but, sentences, if necessary. But nothing, I'm not talking about minimum mandatory sentences of 3 years, 5 years now. It's costing us a fortune to do that.
Do you support federal spending as a means for promoting economic growth?
No. Economic growth has got to happen with us. Economic growth has got to happen in the business world. All we do by using federal spending to promote the economy sets a precedence that says, oh, well, my business isn't doing good, so the government's going to give me money so I don't have to worry about it. No, you have to run your ship. If we have to run the government, or I have to run the government, and I have to oversee this, then you have to take responsibility for your business, responsibility for your employees, grow your business in a responsible manner, and that's that.
Do you support providing... Oh, go ahead.
No, because what I was going to say is where that all leads back to is something that we went through horribly, and this is that bailout, and it just cannot happen. If you're going to fail, you're going to fail. That's it. If you fail, we're going to keep moving on. New businesses will come out of the ashes. You'll figure out a way, because either you'll come forth or you won't.
Do you support providing tax incentives to businesses for the purpose of job creation?
Yes, absolutely. As long as those taxes do their job. In other words, if they get a break, then they have to follow through. You don't get a tax break and not do. And as I've stated previously, statistics show the United States ranks number 3 highest in corporate tax bracket globally. If you want to promote a healthy, productive economy, then corporate income tax must be looked at. In so doing, there's a rub. Hamlet said, solution a combination of the construction of both parts of the fair and flat tax options, which brings a fairness to an unjust tax system, which seems to be ever-changing each tax season. Our tax codes designed by our elected officials, lawyers, and number crunchers, and vast others having input, leaves us in a quandary. And they've written it that way. They didn't write it to be simplified to somebody to understand. They write it in a way that benefits anybody but us and anybody but big business.
How do you see the job market during your term in office?
I'm going to tell you, that's going to depend on how hard the people of this nation push the elected officials in Congress and Senate and get them to do their job. Because the epicenter of this whole thing, and I've told this to everybody, isn't the President of the United States, and it's not the Vice President. It's in your Congress, your Senate, and your House of Representatives. If you want something different, you can't keep doing the same thing. You can't keep electing the same people in there because you're going to get the same. If you want something that's never been done before, then do something that's never been done before. Get someone else to run for office who's never been there before and see what happens.
Exactly what do you plan on doing in changing the present job market?
Well, again, the only way that we can do that I see is to lower our debt with this, again, through the new taxes, tax incentives, give businesses and huge corporations a reason to go ahead and hire, because that is part of our biggest problem, is they don't want to hire because of these tax codes, because of Obamacare, because of a number of different issues, and they all seem to stem back to taxes. Now, regulations, too. There's no question about it. We have so many federal regulations that we have literally put a chokehold on business. So I'm smart enough to say that, yeah, there are certain federal regulations that need to be looked at and said, okay, this isn't going to work. We need to do this.
Do you support requiring states to implement education reforms in order to be eligible for competitive federal grants?
The education system at the federal level has become a nightmare. With the implementation of the Common Core Standard to numerous other constraining regulations, this intervention has tied the hands of the states to operate an effective and productive education system. Although vast laws and budget constraints exist at the state level, this can also be contributed to mismanagement of funding and a nasty word, greed. Ramped up fraud exists everywhere. Everybody knows it and must be addressed aggressively. When we arm our youth with the tools and environment and competent educators that do their job, you wind up with workforce-ready youth. And in so saying, that would I support requiring states to implement education reforms? I think the object is to take education out of the hands of the government, put it back into the hands of the states. And yeah, we would have to require them to implement all kinds of different reforms, and then I probably wouldn't have a problem cutting loose with a lot of money. But if they're going to continue, again, in the same manner they're continuing in, then no, I've got a problem with that, because the system, the way they've designed it, the way they've drawn it up, and the way they operate it, is failing. Our students aren't failing because they're failing. The students are failing because of their leaders, their educational leaders, their state leaders, their elected leaders. That's an absolute fact. Can't blame this on the kids.
So are you sort of against the federal government holding local money hostage in order to achieve their end national goals?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. You could say I'm against them holding it hostage, in so long as the states can provide real-time accounting for where this money is going. Not that it's in the pockets of administrators and senior officials within any branch of any county organization that educates or anywhere else, that it actually went to where it was supposed to go to the kids. Books, supplies, better pay for teachers, a better check system, a far better check system for the educators. We have got to deal with that.
Do you support building the Keystone XL pipeline?
I do. I don't think it's a bad idea. I'll be honest with you. I'm not well versed in it, but from what I've seen of it, it seems to be something that would be highly beneficial. And again, I'm not speaking as if I know the XL layout inside and out, because I don't. I am becoming familiar with it as I go. But from what I'm gathering from it, it seems to be a very doable project.
Do you support funding for the development of renewable energy, solar, wind, thermal, stuff like that?
I do, and here's the greater thing. I support it when it's put in its proper form. So I'm not going to go ahead and pay Greenleaf Energy Sources $4 billion to only find out that $3.6 billion of it went in the pockets of everybody, and you can't show me your research. You want that kind of money, that's not a problem. Show me what you're doing with it. I want to see where it's going. I want to see these new products. I want to see your research and development team. I want to see where you're performing the research. I want the written results of that research. Then I don't mind. But it's not going to go in the pockets of people just to get them fat. It's not going to happen.
Do you support increased regulation on hydraulic fracturing, or what many people know as fracking? Do you support increased regulation on that industry?
I'm going to say no. While many issues, pro and con, exist on this topic, the key element is water usage. We might want to consider options of piping in water from both oceans and evaluate the feasibility of such an undertaking. The environmental impacts, the way I'm hearing them, to the valuable fresh water supply and aquifers can have devastating consequences if not managed appropriately. Everyone agrees to self-sustaining energy-producing nation. I agree with that. The how is the plaguing question in which scientists and engineers seem to be working feverishly to answer so we can produce energy in a responsible manner. I don't know enough about fracking. I know that I'm talking to people that are in the know. I try to get as much information on this as I absolutely can to understand, but from what I'm reading, yeah, it endangers aquifers and a fresh water supply that's just, it's not good. Not good at all. But I agree that we need to get that, the shale out of the ground. Absolutely. It's there. It's going to waste if we don't use it. We become more energy dependent and less energy dependent if we do. And I'll add this in. I'm also a firm believer we need to go back to black coal. And people go, what do you mean black coal? Well, here's the thing. If our grandfathers used it and our fathers used it, and you look up at the sky and nothing's changed, the earth has a funny way of cleaning itself. We seem to be doing just fine. We cut black coal and we killed jobs. We did. And we also killed a valuable energy source. I'm in favor of nuclear.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm in favor of nuclear, and from what I've spoken to from some people, that there is a way to literally re-burn the waste and turn it into ashes, that the ashes are nowhere near the level of radiation that normal waste has.
Do you believe that human activity is contributing to climate change?
Nah, I have a hard time with that one. I know that the planet's got more people on it, and I know we use cars more, and we do this, and this whole carbon footprint thing. But I just have a really, really hard time with that one, considering the size of the Earth and looking around at it and saying, oh, yeah, guess what? It's getting warm in Alaska because we have 30 million more people here than we had yesterday. And you know what I think? Get me the scientific proof to show it. That's what I tell people. Show me. I'm from Missouri. If it's really happening and it's legitimate, then show me your scientific studies to prove it.
Do you support the federal regulation of greenhouse gas emissions?
No.
Care to expound on that?
Yeah, if you want big business out of government, then you must hold big business accountable to the task of keeping our environment safe while pursuing their respective ventures. Although some types of environmental protections must be in place, and I agree with that, for those that won't adhere to self-regulation, general oversight at the government level should be at a minimum. As other nations face similar issues, yet don't experience the problems we seem to, the Earth is a funny way of self-cleansing mechanism that just rejuvenates itself when necessary. Federal regulations in and of themselves have never, ever had a direct impact on how we are and the way things are right now, because this whole regulation with greenhouse gases has only taken place in the last maybe 15 years, 20 years tops. And we didn't have a problem before. All it did was, again, put another restriction on business. These guys are like, well, guess what? We can't do this because of this, and we can't do that because of that. They need to be able to govern themselves, though. Absolutely. You can't just go dumping poisonous chemicals into the environment and not expect to have some kind of an impact. And this is why they've got to say, hey, that's some bad stuff we got here. We got to figure out what to do with it. Maybe they can turn it into something else usable. Who knows? But that's up to them to do.
Do you generally support gun control legislation?
Nope. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. I am a licensed firearms instructor in the state of Florida. I am a National Rifle Association law enforcement instructor. I also am a Class 3 weapons owner. To this day, I have never seen any firearm I've ever owned jump up and kill somebody. What I do say we need is a brand new check system with periodic checks. It's just that simple, because somehow the crazies have come out of the middle of nowhere. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we didn't have these problems. Part of it goes back to people being depressed. Part of it goes back to disgruntled employees who lost their jobs. I could think of 100 reasons. Part of it is we got an angry society. We do. People are more angry now than they've ever been. And with the readily available firearms that are on the streets, it's just so easy to get a gun and then use it. So, yeah, we've got to have some sort of a better check system. It's not about restricting guns. If I had my way, I'd repeal the Hughes Amendment. There was nowhere in the Second Amendment that denotes what firepower a person should be able to have, let alone the ammunition, and the government should never be able to have firepower greater than its citizens. They should not be able to walk around with M16s and all these other things and be able to easily walk in and overthrow the citizens. Shouldn't happen.
If I can probe a little
now,
would you be for something like a background check before buying a gun to make sure someone's not a felon, or mental illness checks before purchasing?
I think that would just be just the tip of the iceberg on it. I really do. I think that the background check system we're looking at has to be extremely extensive. Are you aware of what the MIB, Medical Information Bureau, is?
I am not.
Okay, the Medical Information Bureau, believe it or not, you're in it from the time you're born. And it is a compilation of you, of every injury you've ever been treated by a doctor, every time you've ever been to a hospital, a dentist, any life insurance policies you've ever had. Everything about you medically is in the MIB. The MIB is how an insurance company calculates your risk for having health insurance and life insurance. And that information in that database needs to be made available for the purposes of a background check system. It also includes psychiatric records of every single kind, every single one. If you ever walked into a doctor and said, I just feel depressed today, and he writes that in his notes, it's going into the MIB.
Okay.
And that's again, that's just a part of it. There are a number of systems that need to be made available before you can turn over the responsibility of being able to own a firearm. I realize the Second Amendment doesn't say that. I believe everybody should be able to own a gun that is allowed to own a gun or is safe to own a gun. And who am I to know? People say, well, who are you to say a person's safe? If they were depressed 10 years ago, does that mean they're depressed today? Okay, prove you're not. We have no problem saying you can have the gun. We want you to have a gun. We believe you should be able to defend and protect yourself. Absolutely. But if you are a person with multiple personality disorders and there's 60 people living in you and you have schizophrenia, no, you don't belong walking around with a handgun. Whether you're being treated for medication or not.
Do you support repealing the 2010 Affordable Health Care Act, or what most people call it, Obamacare?
There's nothing affordable about the Affordable Health Care Act. It made it so that employers have cut their workforce. It's not affordable to the people that need it the most. There are things within it that I don't even understand, let alone have been able to even read yet. It was passed in the middle of the night, and may I say, marginally passing through for signature into law. The language in construction is still unclear to so many people, and the future impact is still completely unknown. Obamacare was the president's signature to his legacy, and apparently the people were never taken into consideration when that was made into law. There's nothing affordable about the Health Care Act whatsoever, and it was written in great length purposely so that parts of its construction would have to be researched so thoroughly to be found. Yes, healthcare isn't a 10-page document. I agree. Absolutely agree. But it doesn't have to be a 40-million-page document either. And the funny thing was, from what I'm gathering and from what I've heard, insurance companies fought it all the way. They literally had to restructure and spend hundreds of millions of dollars just to adapt to being able to provide health care the way Obamacare laid it out. So they've spent so much money meeting the guidelines for providing insurance. It was insane.
What are your plans for health care, and how will you accomplish your plans for health care?
Wow. Okay, we're looking, and we have not formulated a health care plan. We knew that the free market society in most ways worked, and in a lot of ways didn't. So there was good and bad in everything, no matter what you did. We are presently researching and looking at socialized medicine, the way it's laid out in Japan, Western Europe, and a few other places. The places that it actually works, and seeing how we can implement what they're doing almost to the scale model the way they're doing it, and have it work here. Because we've got to come down with a healthcare system here that does work. We have to be able to get healthcare under control here, and quality healthcare at that.
Do you think you'd be able to accomplish your healthcare plans while in your term in office?
You know, it's hard to say. I would like to say that we're going to lay the foundation to make that happen, but to say that, yeah, we're going to get it done and we're going to do it in 4 years or we're going to do it in 8 years. No, because this has to be something that is so well researched, and it has to be tested. You have to stress test it to make sure it's going to work. There's no point in making it law if it's not going to work. And there's got to be a way to stress test it somehow to say, yeah, guess what? This plan isn't only just a good plan, but it works. And then it's not going to be passed in the middle of the night. It's going to be handed to the people to actually read, even if it takes them 6 months to get through it, which it shouldn't, because we don't intend to write a 40 million-page document. And the people are going to be brought into this thing and say, hey, not only what do you think and what's your input, but what do you want to see changed? What is it that you don't like, and what are the things you do like? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the people. It's not about me. It's not about the Senate. It's not about Congress. It's about the people we serve.
Do you support illegal immigrants returning to their country of origin before they are eligible for citizenship?
Okay, getting into illegal immigration. We need to get them before they ever get here. This is just, it's got to end. And we have come down with several ways of dealing with this thing, up to and including the whole anchor baby deal. As far as them, quote-unquote, returning before they can become citizens, illegal immigration and deportation have been synonymous for too long. Sanctuary cities have only proved as a haven and rewarded legal efforts of those gaining access to the country and bypass our immigration process. As a candidate potentially facing this issue, I have an action plan to construct a system that will increase the chances that no one falls through the cracks of the system, utilizing and reconstructing databases and deploying advanced and unused methodology and technology, including incorporating penalties for those whose job it is that in ensuring that illegal immigrants don't fall through the system. So in other words, if you're part of that double check system and you drop the ball, you're going to be facing penalties for it. But we need to do everything from cutting off social services and health care. This isn't going to be pretty, it isn't going to be kind, and it isn't going to be nice. But the time for pretty, nice, and politically correct is over. Because we've been nice, because we've been politically correct, we are where we are. So either we want to not complain about it and actually do something, or we just want to complain about it and continue to go the way we're going. When we start cutting off benefits and we start going through a double-check system, if you will, where state enforcement agencies actually bother to go out and see that the person who's collecting benefits is actually a person who's collecting benefits and that they're legally allowed to collect those benefits, and they find that they've got someone who doesn't, A, number one, an arrest will be made, B, number two, the entire family's benefits get cut off, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. But sending them back to come back here to become citizens, no. Once you're on that list, if you come here and you've decided that you were going to do it illegally, now, have a nice day. You can pretty much stay where they are. But here's the thing, and this is the question I ask everybody. Everybody talks about illegal immigration, and you want to tackle it. What you have to ask yourself is, why are they running here in the droves that they're running here in? And the answer is very, very simple. They can't financially afford to exist. Our companies that have decided to take themselves south of the border run sweatshops and pay labor costs that are pennies on the dollar. They can't live on that down there, so they run across the border over here to hope to make better income. No, the object is create the jobs down there, pay those people the wages that they're supposed to be paid so that they're not running across the border. If they could afford to take care of themselves and their families, I would think you find not only are they not running across the border, but they're actually staying and they're leaving. They're going back home because they're like, oh, well, I can go home and, I'll be fine. I can make all this money. Well, sure. I posted a number of different things you'll find all over Facebook about it. I came down from everything from the illegal immigration policy. It was intent for securing the southwestern border of the United States. It's economics versus enforcement. In economics is where we went into discussing about jobs and about a number of different things. I mean, sure, we can go in and do enforcement, but we can build this great wall, and no matter what Donald Trump says, Mexico is not going to pay for it. He can sit here, and the thing I laugh about is, well, I'm going to get Mexico to pay for it, and they're going to want to pay for it. He doesn't bother to tell you how he's going to get them to pay for it. He hasn't said that. And the thing is this, and I tell everybody I talk to this, everybody, including myself, has this great platform. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I never hear them first. I'll say, we're going to do this. I've always said, we're going to do this. And then what you need to be asking these candidates is this: how are you going to sell your platform, not to the people, but to Congress and Senate, and have them implement your platform? I had a really great action plan, and I intend to carry through with it. I am going to rally the country every day to begin outing the Congress and Senate that are not doing the jobs that they were elected and sworn to do. You'll either do your job, and you'll do it in the best interest of this country, or you can be removed. And everybody says, well, how hard it is. No, I will guarantee you it's not that hard to remove a congressman or a senator when everybody from that congressman or senator state is standing at the Capitol saying, that one, get him out. Get somebody new in. Put somebody else in there who's not a politician, who's not a lawyer, who's not part of a Fortune 500 company, who's from the street, and you will see change, and you will see new like you've never seen new before. Because they have no agenda. They don't owe anybody anything. I don't owe anybody anything. I owe the people. That's it. I owe the people of this nation a safe and responsible nation for their futures and the futures of their children. That's what I owe. And nothing more. And I'm going to guarantee you, when I start and we get the first congressman and the first senator out of there, they'll be like, wait a minute, they're getting rid of us. And they will either step up or step out. The other thing we have to do is institute what you and I and every other person in the United States goes through, and that's an employment probationary period. You put a congressman and a senator on a 180-day probationary period that either they cut the mustard or they get cut. And then let me be clear, it's not just for Congress and Senate and the representatives. This goes for appointed officials as well. Yeah, the U.S. Supreme Court and any other appointed official. So it's not just directed only at Congress, Senate, and the House of Representatives. And that goes for me, too. If I'm not doing my job, get rid of me. If I'm not doing the job the way I'm supposed to be doing it, and you don't think I'm doing a good job, get out there and say, you know what, you have to leave office. You're just not cutting the mustard. We're going to get somebody else in there. I'll go peaceful. I won't complain. But I can go back and say I did my best. I had rallied the nation, and that's how it is. Because either Congress and Senate and the House are either going to begin to work together, or they can be replaced, and we'll get people in there who will.
Do you support same-sex marriage?
Personally, myself, here's my opinion. Marriage doesn't belong in government. Never has. The government should not be overseeing any type of marriage whatsoever. Because a marriage license is nothing more than a contract between two people that say, I will do this and I will do that. They make an oath to each other. That never belonged in the hands of the government.
Do you support... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say my personal views on it will not be clouded by my job as Commander-in-Chief.
Do you support targeting suspected terrorists outside of official theaters of conflict?
No, I really, really don't. Unless these guys are... And here's the thing. Where that all goes back to is the Patriot Act. And that's where it's derived from. And the Patriot Act in and of itself is a failure. An absolute and complete failure. It doesn't do what somebody said it was going to do. So no, I can't sit there and say, yeah, I support targeting suspected terrorists outside of official theaters of conflict, because anybody at that point that opens the gate, I think he's a suspected terrorist. Well, okay, what gives you an inclination that he might be? And where's your 30-point checklist that you've gone through that says I've checked all these things off and he meets all 30 qualifications to be a suspected terrorist? But we don't have a problem with his country. But he's a terrorist. No, no. Unless this is somebody that's on the list, that's met these list qualifications, if you will. But it winds up targeting us. It has, and everybody will tell you. I've listened to everybody. I've never actually read the Patriot Act in its complete form. I've read the highlights, and the highlights themselves are scary enough.
What plans, if any, do you have for ending the war in the Middle East?
Here's the thing, and this actually was taken on in the debate. Lindsey Graham said it. Jen Bell said it. I said it long before any of them. We've got to put boots on the ground people, because if we don't take it to them, they're going to take it to us. Now, can we do this? Can we get this thing ended? The answer is yeah. Everybody wants to hear a number. They want to hear 3 years. They want to hear 5 years. They want to hear a year. I think we need to do whatever we need to do to wipe out ISIS, give them a one-way trip ticket to hell, and get it over with, and then come home. But do I think we need to go in there and spend all this money rebuilding them and doing this and doing that? No, I'm not with that at all. I think we can go in there, though, and systematically take this thing apart.
Okay, just so you're aware, this interview is coming up on being an hour long, and there are many questions left. And I have another interview.
I'll make it brief.
I have another interview in about an hour, so I'm going to give you about 45 more minutes to get through the rest of the questions. I'll make them quick then. If we start coming down on that 45 minutes, I will give you a fair notice. But I think we'll be able to make it through, but just letting you know. Are you in favor of the utilization of technical nuclear weapons in the Middle East?
No, absolutely not. If people knew and understood that specific statement. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are you in favor of the utilization of tactical nuclear devices in the Middle East?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And that's what I thought I heard. No. Because here's the problem with that. You start using nukes, and you start saying the word Afghanistan, and you look at where Afghanistan geographically is, you're asking for World War IV, not even World War III. You think that China is going to let you drop a tactical nuclear device anywhere near their borders? Not in a million years. So no, I am tactical nuclear weapons of any kind isn't the first resort, a second resort, or a third resort. It is the absolute last resort after exhausting every single possibility on the planet. It's having the final word of being able to say, yep, I'm going to break out the nukes, has to be the greatest responsibility there is to mankind. And having that authority, you have got to have a level of resolve about you and responsibility enough to know, hey, I'm diplomatic enough, I don't need nukes. There's too many other options.
Should the United States use military force in order to prevent governments hostile to the U.S. from possessing a nuclear weapon?
The procurement and proliferation of nuclear material to design and build nuclear weapons to nations that pose a threat to the United States can be summed up by saying this: why have we become a threat to them to begin with? We have engaged in vast numbers of theaters of combat for decades. The obvious answer is this: it always has been, we will use military force to protect our nation at all costs, no questions asked. We demand for these materials, with the demand for these materials growing exponentially, we must be proactive at all levels. As we have seen, sanctions don't work. So no, the answer is we will do whatever we have to do to prevent those that intend to do us harm from acquiring even the slightest piece of anything radioactive.
What are your plans for combating ISIS, Isil, and terrorism?
I think a great deal of that, and again, this was even talked about in the debates, it's boots on the ground is good. But boots on the ground, hardcore, is only as good as the intel to work with it. So our human intel has to be real time, has to be viable, has to be reliable in order for boots on the ground to work. So part of the key to it all is the intelligence. The intelligence has got to be there before we can start combating anything. When we've got good intelligence, we can get boots on the ground people and then just start taking it to them and knocking it out. We can do this through air power. We can do it on the ground. But we will end it. We will be taking it to them, and ISIS will be more than just a distant memory. They will just have been forgotten like they never existed between them and Al-Qaeda. ISIS, Isil, or Al-Qaeda. But the thing is this, and I'll make this really quick. One thing I've tried to explain to people. These people have been killing themselves before Jesus Christ was born. Yet we think, and we have the audacity to believe, that we can go there and within a matter of a century or so, think that within that century we're going to change them. We're going to make you democratic. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Really? I mean, come on. We've been trying to change the world since we got here. And it hasn't worked. But are they a threat? Absolutely. Do they need to be dealt with? Absolutely. Are we going to take it on head on and deal with it? Absolutely.
Do you support allowing individuals to divert a portion of their Social Security taxes into individual or personal retirement accounts?
Utilizing a system where people can invest their retirement savings not only should be allowed, but welcomed. With the uncertainty of the Social Security funding market in its present state, diversion makes the most financial sense. The emphasis on finding a financially stable institution is paramount to the existence and the availability of those funds when the time comes to access them. Personal fiscal responsibility will and does play a major role. This, in turn, falls under a new taxation system as well. It's all part of this whole taxation system. And, yeah, I think that people being fiscally responsible for themselves, being able to take their money and saying, yes, I'm going to put it here, I'm going to put it there because I can't trust the present system. How can you blame people when every day they hear on the news, Social Security isn't going to be there in 6 weeks, Social Security isn't going to be there in 11 months, Social Security isn't going to be there in 10 years, and in order to get it, guess what? You're now going to have to be 95 years old. Okay, we're living longer. There's no question about it. Medical advances keep us living longer. How much longer, who knows? But the point is that we all need to play our own role in looking out for our financial well-being for the golden years.
Have you served in the armed forces in any capacity?
I'm sorry, have I served in the armed forces?
In any capacity?
Yes, sir. I served in the Army from 1981 to 86. I was not in combat. I have not earned any combat medals. I didn't save any lives. I wasn't special forces. I didn't do anything super special whatsoever. I served my country honorably for that time, got an honorable discharge, and moved on in the private sector.
What are your plans for America's veterans?
Veterans, we have made one of our greatest priorities because our government hasn't. One of the greatest things that we're going to do is the dismantling of the present VA system. And we are going to move to what we have termed the Medical Benefits Bureau. What's going to happen is this. You're going to be issued upon your ETS from the service at your point of exit when you're handed your DD-214, as long as it was honorable. You're going to be handed a credit card. It's going to look like a Visa card. It's going to have your picture on it, your service number on it, and your thumbprint. It's going to carry a $10,000 unqualifying credit line on it. But more importantly, here's what it serves with. It's going to be a health care card. You're going to be able to use that at any single health care provider on the globe. Any doctor, any hospital, any provider, any pharmacy, it doesn't matter where. Slide the card, it's done, it's over, you're covered. And it doesn't mean that you're in the hospital and they discharge you in 3 days. No. When you are able to and your doctor says you're ready to be discharged, you will be discharged, and you're not getting third-class service. Every single service member gets a private room, and they're going to get congressional-style health care. Also, within that card and that credit line is your VA loan, your education benefits. Everything about your benefits will be on that card, and it will be streamlined in an online system, and there will be an 800 number you can call that you will be able to speak to knowledgeable, real-time people onshore. This is not offshore. This is an onshore phone bank of people working within the military benefits sphere who have access to be able to answer every single conceivable possible question. Because if I'm not laying out for VA doctors, VA hospitals, VA nurses, this, that, and the next thing, I've got hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that I can better put to use with the veterans who need it. And it also goes with their direct family members. So it's not just the veteran. Those family benefits are also involved in that card. Now, somebody asked me, well, what's the interest rate on the Visa part? 1%. 1%, that's it. 1% across the board. Now, if you default on that, it cuts your credit line as long as you maintain it and you pay it like you're supposed to. It's $10,000 for 1 to 3 years. 3 to 5 years, it goes to $15,000. 5 years to 10 years, it jumps to $30,000. After 10 years, it's a $100,000 credit line across the board.
Okay. The following questions are just general spending on different areas of the budget questions. Answer each category with slightly increase, greatly increase, slightly decrease, greatly decrease, remain the same, or no opinion. Agriculture.
I'm going to say greatly increase agriculture. Our farmers are, greatly increase.
Arts.
Arts, I would say slightly increase.
Defense.
Greatly increase.
Education.
Greatly increase, in so long as they meet the terms we've previously discussed.
Environment.
Environment, I'm going to say greatly increase with not on regulation so much as just increase in general.
Homeland Security.
I'm going to say greatly increased, and I'm going to primarily focus that on illegal immigration and border control.
International aid.
Greatly decreased.
Medical research.
Again, I'm going to say greatly increased, but only when they show us where that money went, what research they did, what tests were performed, what are they doing, that we're not lining the pockets of the researchers.
Scientific research.
Greatly increased with the above.
Space exploration.
Greatly increased, again, with the above.
United Nations.
Eliminate, gone.
Welfare.
Welfare, we're going to slightly increase it. Welfare and fraud have reached epidemic proportions. The system as it was originally drafted has definitely dramatically failed. It's horrible. We have to construct a system that incorporates both sustainability for the future needs while serving its intended purpose as temporary help. The biggest problems we have in this system is widespread fraud. And a term I've coined, generational continuance. Generational continuance being that of one where generation after generation follow the same path as the next within the welfare system. It would be fiscally irresponsible to allow the continuation of the same behaviors to occur time and time again. The solution is economic improvement.
Okay, let's do the same thing with different types of taxes. Taxes in general. Capital gains tax.
On the capital gains tax, I would definitely decrease it. You want investors, you're going to decrease the taxes, you're going to get investment like you've never seen.
Corporate taxes.
I'm going to say greatly decrease.
Small business tax.
Greatly decrease. Also, I want to be sure when saying, under the greatly decrease, that again, it follows that with that decrease, that they're doing what the decreases were supposed to do, that they are hiring, that they're growing their companies. Not that they're just taking the tax incentives and pocketing the difference.
Okay, excise tax on alcohol.
I'm going to say slightly increase.
Excise tax on cigarettes.
Slightly increase.
Transportation and fuel.
I'm going to say greatly decrease.
Income tax on low-income families.
Okay, here's the interesting thing. Under the fair and flat tax systems, that's eliminated anyway.
Okay. Income tax on middle-income families.
New taxation system, eliminated.
I'm guessing the same for higher-income families.
Yeah.
Right. Inheritance tax.
I think we need to eliminate it. It's not fair to tax someone that their family worked generations for this and amassed this wealth to turn around and tax them because somebody passed away and they were fortunate enough to be left these riches.
Payroll taxes.
Payroll taxes, you're going to have to greatly decrease them because it goes in the same business with corporate tax. You want to bring employees aboard, you want employees to stay, you've got to have to decrease it.
All right, let's talk about a little bit about executive orders. How will you use them, and should they be used?
Ooh.
And let's throw in, how would you avoid using them?
Here's the problem I've always seen with executive orders. Executive orders are a way for the president to bypass Congress and Senate and his predecessors. The moment you start using executive orders because you can't get Congress and Senate to work with you, and you're going to sign executive order after executive order, then what's the point in having Congress and Senate at all? Why have them? If all you're going to do is bypass them, and you don't like the decision they've come down with, then get the people behind it and do something about it. Don't just sit there and say, well, I have the power of executive order, and because I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to write this order this way. Yeah, I don't only intend to be probably one of the first presidents who's not going to use it. I'm going to be one of the first presidents who actually has Congress and Senate doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because that's why they use the executive order, is because, well, you're not going to do it, so I'll just do it for you. No. No. Nope.
Okay, we're coming up on the very last part of the interview. We have 20 minutes to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
This question's about administrative priorities. In 100 words or less, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities if elected? Do these things require additional funding for implementation? And explain how you would obtain the funding.
Okay, I think the economy, I think terrorism, and the U.S. Constitution, with respect to the first item, creating a new taxation system will have a great impact on the ability to enhance growth on many, many levels. Number 2, terrorism has become in nature, an overwhelming threat. We must attack it at every level while remaining mindful of cost. You can effectively combat terrorism and not cost both lives and exorbitant amounts of money, which otherwise places a drain on other much-needed programs here at home. I've also made a promise to this country that while I'm on my watch, I'm not going to bury one single one of their sons or daughters. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be necessary. We have the firepower. We have the manpower. And we have the ability to prevent that from happening. We can conquer. We will prevail. We are the United States of America, and we will be a force not to be reckoned with, and the world will know what they have long forgotten. The U.S. Constitution, which is interesting, was written very clearly and was not constructed for interpretation. Now, they left some interesting loopholes in it, which I thought was interesting, about how, they're going to give authority to states for this and states for that. But between Congress, Senate, the House of Representatives, and the U.S. Supreme Court, what has happened, and I have actually come out and said this because people say, well, why are you running for president? I tell them it's because our nation is under erosion at exponential rates. The systematic deconstruction of the U.S. Constitution by our elected officials and appointed U.S. Supreme Court. Our rights and freedoms been chipped away at daily. Our economic and financial stability is in peril, and our presence and respect among nations on the world stage has been diminished to nothing. And until we get a Supreme Court and elected officials to say, hey, wait a minute, I don't think that's what the Constitution was supposed to mean. You are going to have the same thing you have today. A lot of irritated, pissed off people because their leaders, their officials, and their appointed justices saw fit to backdoor the American people and do whatever they felt was in their own best interest, that they know better than the people. And those are the three things.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Those are the top three things I plan on getting into.
What two past presidents influenced you the most, and what was most notable about their terms in office that led you to admire them?
John F. Kennedy. He was an innovator. He was a visionary. He was a take-charge kind of president. I think those are some of his finer qualities. And Reagan was my second, and he basically falls into the same thing. He made a few mistakes. Every president does. There's no question about that. But he was a statesman. He made himself on the world stage to be a force not to be reckoned with, that he was not going to be pushed around, and that the United States was not going to be taken advantage of. And those probably are my two key people.
Time for some closing remarks. In 2 minutes or less, tell us why we should vote for you.
The reason you should vote for me is this. I'm not a politician. I've never served in government. I'm not a business leader. I don't have $40 billion. But my qualifications are I'm 52 years old, a natural-born citizen. I've lived here more than 14 years of my life. And because I'm 52, I have watched this country fall into a spinning spiral of just unfixable mess, that it's going to take someone from the street to turn this thing around, because the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, and I'll say it, it doesn't matter, Jandel, Chris Christie, Graham, and Trump, they don't eat at our dinner tables. They don't shop where we shop. They don't live in our world. They don't see our doctors. They don't understand our problems. They can say they do, but they don't. They don't. It's going to take someone who does, who lives in the street. And when I say that, I don't mean it physically homeless, but that, is of a middle class or lower middle class income, that understands the pulse of the nation and actually knows what's going on, to get this thing turned around. Somebody that can not only relate to the people, but is of the people. And that's exactly what I am.
Thank you again for participating. I'd like to thank my listeners for listening. Be sure to check back in the future for more candidate interviews. Have a good day, and remember to keep informed and keep involved. Thanks again, Mr. Zutler.
Can I throw in our web address?
Go for it.
Okay, you can find us at www.danielpzutlerforpresident.com or zutlerforpresident.com. You can find us on Facebook at Daniel Paul Zutler, on Twitter at Zutler for Prez. Thank you, and God bless our nation.